Hey Denchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to my review of the fourth album from the Canadian pop star Justin Bieber. This one's called Purpose. And I never thought I'd be here in front of a screen talking about a Justin Bieber album and actually thinking good things about it. If you remember my review of Jack U's record earlier this year, I thought it was kind of interesting to see Justin Bieber working with EDM, and I couldn't have imagined he was coming out with a mostly electronic album, in large part produced by Skrillex and featuring a wide number of awesome producers like Blood, Pooh Bear, and Steve James, who I had previously contacted in the last couple of years about his remixes, and we've done features with him at Your EDM, so I thought it was awesome to see him on this record producing the title track, Purpose, which was one of my favorites from the album. And overall, this album was just so surprising to me that it's probably one of my favorites so far of the year. I really freaking like this album, and I'm really disappointed in myself that I do, because it still centers around this kind of poppy sound, and he's still trying to get over the fan base of his classic fans, but he's also pulling in so many new fans. People are talking endlessly about how good this album is, and although the critical reception, at least for things I've watched, are giving him kind of average reviews, most of the people I've talked to have thought this album was incredible. First, I'm going to talk about the major flaws with this album, and then I'm going to get into the ones that I really freaking dig. First of all, the first track on the album, Mark My Words, kind of sums up the entire album with this somber electronic sound. This would really work if I think it transitioned a little better into the second track. I'll show you. Overall, it just kind of starts and ends pretty quick, and it works as an intro, but I don't think it works in the context of trying to connect it into the next song or anything like that. I think overall, maybe I'll Show You it could have even worked better as the first track on the album. Although it's not a bad song, I think it just didn't really work in the context of trying to be an intro to the album. I dig it. I could have found a better place on the record. There's a streak of really awesome freaking songs, and then we get No Sense featuring Travis Scott, and I think in a way, although people are really digging Travis Scott's sound, I think he kind of ruins the sound of this track, and overall the sound of the album where it was trying to go. Kind of bringing in those auto-tuned vocals and bringing more of a hip-hop sound, which I don't think was super enjoyable. And if you guys were wondering, really the only reason I'm reviewing this on my channel, because I'm mainly doing EDM reviews other than for my rapid-fire reviews where I'll talk about other stuff, because most things that aren't EDM reviews for me tend to get a lot of negative comments on them, is because Skrillex, in part, like I said, produced this album and did a good chunk. I think 5 tracks on this album were produced by him out of the 13, so that's a fairly significant amount, and I would definitely review anything Skrillex puts out. I think in large part, he really made this album work. I remember Bieber said something quite some time ago that said Skrillex really changed the way that he viewed music, and I think in large part that's why this album went in a really nice direction. The production is absolutely insane on this. His vocals actually sound pretty mature, and his lyricism doesn't sound too bland either, which is what we've heard with his past 3 albums. The most being Journals, which was probably his least successful album. Life is Worth Living ties into a little bit more of that sound that he was going with Love Yourself and the title track Purpose, but I think this is probably the most boring of those 3. Where Are You Now from the Jack U album reappears onto this one, which was a little annoying, but I think it finds its place, especially this album is going to be a lot more successful because that track was on there and it was one of the singles, and it didn't really bug me being in the context of this record. I think it works, especially coming before the track Children, which is one of the biggest freaking bangers on this album, produced by Skrillex, and I think Blood was on this one as well. It's just this really awesome freaking like future house kind of style, and it just really pulls off this electronic sound much better than most of the record does. Like I said, the title track Purpose was one of my favorites, features some awesome sampling from Bieber himself, which I thought was really cool. It's a track about God and faith, which as a Christian I think that's really awesome. What Do You Mean I always thought was really catchy. Some people were thinking Skrillex produced it, but it actually wasn't. Just a super catchy track, and I always like to hear it come on the radio, even though it's been so freaking overplayed, but I've never stopped liking it regardless. Sorry, I really love the vocals on this one, and The production, at least at the drop section, I guess you could call it, is also pretty catchy as well, and people have really been enjoying that one. Love Yourself is probably one of the best on the records as well. Getting a lot of attention, probably going to be the next radio single, I'm guessing. It's pretty catchy. He shows off his vocals extremely well, and like I said, he's definitely matured as a vocalist and as a lyricist. It was co-written by Ed Sheeran, and you can definitely tell with the background vocals kind of sounding pretty close to Ed Sheeran's sound, and it works. No Pressure featuring Big Sean. I never really was into Big Sean, but I think his rap on this one is actually pretty clean and decent, and I enjoyed it a lot more than his previous work. Definitely works in the context of this record and of this song, and Bieber pulls it off as well. There's a duet with Halsey called The Feeling, also Skrillex produced, and that one's pretty catchy, although I didn't think it was one of the most interesting and definitely not one of my favorites on it. Definitely pulls it off better than some of the tracks on this record and better than most of his older music. So overall, on this record, we're going to see a lot of tunes have excellent production, good lyricism, and a pretty astounding vocalist. And although I don't want to be like those tweens that are just super into Bieber because he's good looking or whatever, I'm enjoying this album primarily for the production, and coming from someone who's been into dance music for a while, I think this album is pretty solid. Like I said, probably one of my favorites of the year. Not much to dislike about this record. Even the tracks that are my least favorite on this one, I didn't really dislike, but rather just kind of think are boring. I actually will skip over No Sense while listening through this. Overall, the rest of this record is pretty enjoyable, and definitely would suggest going out and buying this. I didn't go and get the deluxe version, which maybe I'm disappointed I did, because some of the deluxe ones are actually pretty good. My bad. Anyway, I'm thinking this one's very deserving of an 8.5. I was originally going to give this a 7.5, and then I moved it up to an 8, and after listening to it a couple more times, and I actually went out to Walmart and got it, I think it's definitely deserving of at least an 8.5. Only really disliked 2 tracks on this record. That's out of 13 freaking tracks, and a lot of these are bangers. They're super meaningful lyrics, and just some fantastic vocals on this one, and really shows how much Justin Bieber has developed as an artist. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hope you don't hate me for giving Justin Bieber a really good rating, and for calling this album probably one of my favorites of 2015. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Like I said, most people that I talk to think this is a pretty freaking good record. We listened through it last night at school, this kind of little listening party thing, playing some Super Smash Bros, and it was just a really fun time. A really good album to listen through, and I think you'll enjoy it too. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.